Let's get into it and get down to it. Welcome to Figure It Out. This is George Grumbacher. Joining me, as always, is Sentari Minor,
Hello, folks.
helping us move from awareness to action. Today is scotch, cigarettes, food, booze, beer, wine. Just kidding. Sentari and I were just talking about getting food delivered, and you can pretty much get anything delivered these days at your home or your work, wherever you are working, because Centauri, we have the ability to work at different locations, more
We
so than
can
we used
work
to.
anywhere these days, which, yes, I'm excited to dive into this topic with you.
Yeah, except we can't anymore because boss man is saying, boss lady, get back into the office.
Yes. Which as you know, I agree with for the most part. I think Bob, what sparked this conversation is Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, mandated all of his employees to come back 4 days a week. And in his memo, he leaned into one of the Disney values, which I thought was great, but also talked about like it's not about productivity, which everyone cites first. It's like I'm more productive at home. It's like great, but actually the workplace is for collaboration, mentorship, professional development, connection. Like the loneliness is a real thing, and so you need to be around your peers and be around people. So it was the first time where a CEO has really like put it in a way that really resonated with, I think, with a lot more folks than just like you have to be here. There was a reason beyond I just want to micromanage you. It's like, no, this is good for you to be here. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
What was the core value, if you remember? Do you remember what it was?
Oh, theirs is about Disney's creativity. He's like, you can't be creative via, I mean, you can be, but it's not conducive to being the most creative via Zoom or Teams or whatever you use.
I listened to Bob Iger's autobiography recently. I think it's called Ride of a Lifetime. It was
Oh,
very
okay.
good, but he dedicated a good chunk, like an entire chapter, if not more, to his relationship with Steve Jobs. And I was very
Oh,
interested in that. I mean, I think that at this stage of the proceedings, that we all place Steve Jobs at just the pantheon, the
nice.
Mount
Yeah, yeah.
Rushmore of professionals and thinkers and all that stuff. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And you weren't making the iPhone remotely.
Yeah, you just couldn't do it. I wouldn't say here's the thing you always come back to. It's not impossible, right? Like it's not black and white, but would it be easier to do in person? I think as we've talked about on so many shows, the pendulum eh, swung probably too much, and now we're living in a world of extremes where I've heard from CEOs and other folks around, we can't get our people to come into the office, or this person. I have a buddy whose wife actually got terminated because they moved from the East Coast to Phoenix, didn't tell the employer, just because they were like, they don't need to know that, and they were like, no, you have to come back to the office, and so. What are you going to do about this? And that's happening more and more. And it's a boon, or it's a bearing on employers. I get from the employee side why it's important, but man, it's still so hard for companies to figure out. It's still kind of a mess.
I'm all about uh, asking for forgiveness versus permission, but your
So
friend there,
right, like that's kind of like that's ballsy. That's like, oh, okay.
I do
You
what
just
I
don't.
want.
I
Yeah,
live in Arizona now. It's like, well, we're based in Philadelphia, so
yeah, that's
uh
weird.
yeah.
Not going to be easy. So I did not read, well, I think I'm 99% sure that the CEO of Salesforce crunched the numbers, and he discovered that employees who work remotely are considerably less productive than those who come
Mm.
into the office.
Oh, Benahoff. We can also talk about that all hands meeting that went sideways with him. But yeah, I think look, from the idea that people are more productive, I bet that's probably true depending on what your function is. If you're probably like a software engineer or something where you just are very, very strong individual contributor, you put things in a spreadsheet, things come out of that spreadsheet. That's probably right. But when it relates to anything that requires other people or collaboration, there's just nothing better than in person, having your team near you. My team is here 4 days a week. Also, not because we've mandated it, but because they're like, this is just an easier way for us to get things done. I couldn't imagine this being fully virtual. So Yeah, I also think that's because of the macroeconomic trends of right now. It's now becoming more of an employer's market, so you'll have more of the strength and leverage to tell people to come back in, which I think is very brilliant on Iger's part, the timing, because gone are the days as we saw from kind of Meta and Twitter where people are just getting these crazy salaries and can do whatever they want. Now it's going to be harder to find a job, so you might want to keep your job and just drive to the office.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing. And I don't, I, I work remotely. I do not
Yeah,
have
you
an
always
office,
have. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I do not work with a lot of other human beings, as my coworkers. So my experience is different. And it's obviously a very, very subjective thing. And we were
For
talking
sure,
about
for
in
sure, for sure.
an earlier conversation here about if I position myself and make myself indispensable and I demonstrate and I prove that I am a dynamite team member and I can get my work done wherever, well, then you have a case to make.
For
And
sure.
why not make it? I am curious as to your practical experience. There's been a little bit of water that's gone under the bridge since we initially had some of these conversations,
Oh yeah.
and your organization is growing like crazy, and you're responsible for a lot of that. So I was just, your experience, and I think you said your folks come in 4 days a week, but tell me a little bit more about if it's shifted, your thinking around this has shifted or changed.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because my previous job was completely remote. I was the only Arizona employee. I went to our HQ for maybe quarterly, which was it worked, right? But it was also a world where I didn't have to necessarily collaborate with folks on the day to day. It was good for thought leadership, but my purview was like do these things in Arizona or San Francisco and Dallas, and I went between those three markets. So I know that it can work, right? Like I know that it can work. So I'm not anti-remote work. Where I think you need where it's really, really hard to do this is if you're in a collaborative or creative environment where you're growing and scaling very fast. I think for me, being having our leadership team in-house 4 times a week. All of our leadership team is pretty much here 3 or 4 times a week, and we meet for at least we meet every week for 3 hours. We're all together physically in person, and I just don't think we've been able to get through a lot of the tougher conversations or just things that need immediate attention. If we were trying to say like, "Hey George, can I schedule 15 minutes with you? No, I have something. I'm going to go get my kids. Can we talk tonight?" It's like, just be here. Let me go talk to you. And so I think my thoughts have also changed. It's like now I manage a young team, so my folks are like anywhere from 24 to 30, and I want to be there to provide mentorship, professional development, any coaching. I think there's a lot that can be said, and a lot comes from just like being in the room with someone and seeing how they react and how they carry themselves that young professionals absolutely need. I'm glad that I got that early on in my career. And now you have a generation of folks that were onboarded during COVID. So they were onboarded via Zoom. They are sometimes with their cameras on, cameras off, and they're not getting like how they should interact in a real world setting. And I think we're doing a big disservice to those folks.
Well, I think that those are great thoughts. A couple things popped into my head.
Mm,
Effectiveness at communicating this, at making big, challenging, hard decisions. Bob Iger has a lot of currency in that he was one of the more successful CEOs out there. I
yeah.
guarantee that Steve Jobs or even whoever Tim Cook, when he says we're coming back in, here's why, because it's going to help us serve our mission, that you're not going to get a lot of pushback. People are probably going to be more amenable and going along with that because they trust them and they know
Yep.
that, you know, versus if you're an asshole, probably going to get a lot of pushback. And if there's not
Yeah.
actual value to being in the office, and it's just, you just want to be able to see me and you want to micromanage me, well, then you're probably going to have a lot less success.
Yeah. And I think the companies and brands where that's apparent, and I actually don't agree with I would say I would not agree with those companies if their only reason for bringing people back is so that they can kind of see in micromanagement. That's not a reason to bring people back. But if it's to make sure that you can collaborate, you can be cross functional, that people are actually getting out of their homes and like seeing other people, which I think is very very important. I know folks who I'm on these Zoom calls with folks from around the country, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've worked from home the last 2 years. Sometimes I only leave my house to go get groceries or I go pick up this." And I'm like, that's not healthy. Like you need to be around people. And I think at least it forces folks to be around people who are outside of their family. It's just the healthier thing to do too.
I think that that's right. And you talked about the ability to the practicality of having tougher conversations or more impactful conversations, which is just more serious conversations, be they
Yeah.
positive, be they negative. Um, it's better done in an actual interpersonal in-person conversation, and trying to make decisions about things. There needs to be somebody who makes the final decision about something,
Yes, that is very true.
and will sort of bring in this stakeholder capitalism conversation. And one of the things that got us started on this was Basecamp a couple of years ago,
Oh, right, right. Yeah.
talking about how they stopped letting people have political conversations on the Slack channels and the pushback, and everybody quit. And oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. And shame on me, I should have researched how Basecamp is doing, but I'm sure that they're doing just fine.
Yeah,
But
I
my
mean,
thing
I'm
here,
currently using Basecamp, so yes, they're doing.
so,
They still
so they,
exist.
they
They
stay in
still
the
exist.
business. uh, you know, you can't you can't serve two masters. We need
It's very
to,
true.
I think, get back to what a company is designed to do, and that's make money, and it's make money for shareholders. So I'm getting back to that, and it's a nice to have to be able to also say, and hey, it's not that I don't care about you, other people, and your views, but the primary mission of this organization is to make money.
I do think, well, I'll go a step, not that I disagree with you, but it's more so like I think there are nuances to it where companies and brands can make it work if they spend intentional time getting those stakeholders all on the same page. So I'm thinking through like if you're BP, like it is what it is. Like you're an oil company. I like don't go work for BP if you think that it's going to be changing because it's not, right? And we're good at that. And everyone knows that. So like that's where it's actually people are aligned. It's like their board knows this. If you work for them, you get it. I think where that messy middle is where it's like Basecamp. It's like they do project management and collaboration software. It's like that's what we do. Yes, these would be, to your point, nice to have, but I do think there are some brands that if you do it right, you can have the social impact, you can make a bunch of money, and you can get everyone on the same page about where you want to be. It just takes a lot more time and intention, but to your point, it is a nice to have for most, and that makes sense.
BP is an excellent example. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you don't do those things.
Right.
I'm saying
You
that
don't lead with doing those things.
that that that's right. We
Yeah,
don't we
I get
don't
that.
water it down. We don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Once we are crushing it, CBP, I'm sure that they give tons of money to
Oh yeah,
charity.
BP. Yeah,
And
they actually very much
at the
do.
end of the day,
Yeah.
they're probably best positioned to be doing social good, even though
Right.
it's
I
just a
agree with that.
function of let's keep our eye on the prize. And when we try, I'm probably reaching here and I'm probably going just too far on things, but there is a lot of rumblings about socialism and wanting to do more social good and all that. I think that's awesome. I think we should protect people who are at risk, but you don't rob Peter to pay Paul.
Paul.
We
Yeah, yeah.
we we cannot destroy capitalism and just replace it with socialism, because socialism is great at distributing resources. They're not good at producing resources. And if we stop companies from producing at their highest capacity or their highest level, it's going to negatively impact our ability as a society to do the social good that we're interested in
Right, right, right.
doing.
And the best way to I mean, really, the best way to kind of lift someone out of poverty or to give opportunity, right, is for them to figure out a better ways for them to engage in capitalism, not socialism. It's like get the education, providing the resources, all those things to get them to be a better player in a framework of capitalism, not the opposite of like, here's just a bunch of money, go forth, just be. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. I don't know why that's such a controversial thing. Maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not. I don't. Yeah, I think there's like I do think also to our previous conversations, if we take a step back, there are so many kind of firebrand people, let's say on the left, where you hear these things about like, we have to, oh God, whatever it might be, to move more towards socialist views. I'm like, I actually don't think that many people, I'm hoping that many people actually believe that. I think most people fundamentally believe that like capitalism works. Now that the some of the externalities of capitalism we can try to kind of curtail and get. I totally agree with that too. But for the most part, like this country was built and it's great because of that framework. There should be laws, regulations, whatever it might be. Southwest Airlines being a great example of when capitalism doesn't go well. But other than that, like people should want to engage in something that's going to make them and their families and the country more money, more prosperous, all those things.
Yeah. And I probably think that it's something that's in the ether because it's definitely in the ether. There's plenty of
It's in the
people
ether
who
for
are.
sure. For sure.
That's why I think that is
That's
because
why it's
there's lots
there.
of people because there's lots of people spending so much money and spending it on nice to haves. Anyway, anyway. Well, let's circle back on this. What else in terms of hybrid return to work, stakeholder capitalism, what companies are responsible to?
I
What
think
else is worthwhile
also
talking about?
in the return to office hybrid conversation, and this is something that's been going on since COVID started. It's like, what is the I think we talked about this on a couple of pods ago. What is the role of an employer, right? And so you have all these folks saying, well, I can't come back to the office because I have to take care of my kids, or I have to take care of an elderly parent, or I have to do these things, which totally understand, right? But like, is it my job as your employer or your boss to is that for me to take up the tab and deal with? And I think that's where companies are trying to figure out right now, like how much of that do you want to engage in, or you're just saying like, hey, we're not big enough to absorb that, so this just may not be for you. And I think that's a larger conversation of like, what is your job as a company for your employees, other than to make sure that they're safe, both physically and psychologically, make sure they're paid, make sure that they're engaged, hopefully that they're living a healthy, happy lifestyle. But other than that, like, is it my job to make sure that you can pick up your kid every day? It's a nice to have, and if it works out, great. But don't tell me that I'm a bad employer because that's not happening, or that this model is unsustainable because you're not letting people be free or flexible. It's like, well, it's a nice to have, and kudos to the companies that can make it happen. But for many that it's just not feasible because they need you here, that's also okay.
Thank you. It's a lot of in a lot of ways, chicken or the egg kind of a thing. Is
Mm-hmm.
it the company's job? Is it the individual's job? Um, you look at the benefits and drawbacks of unions.
Mm,
You look at the benefits of drawbacks of tenure. You look at the benefits and drawbacks
so true.
of
10 years a good one.
apathy.
10 years a very good one.
Um, and the more upfront I can be with my employer about who I am and what I want on the front end, the better off I'm going to be, the better positioned I am financially as an individual, then I can walk away or be more demanding or be more proactive in what my demands are of my employer. And the better job I do and the more productive I am, um, I am a self-reliance guy. I am a power of the individual's person.
Yep.
That is what I believe, obviously.
That is very George Kronbacher for sure.
And there's a lot of people that aren't that way. And that's okay. And they're probably the union folks. They're probably, more benefits. And I guess that neither is right or it's wrong. Hmm.
What do you think are it's interesting you talked about the like the plus and minuses of unions because you're right. There's I understand why unions exist for sure, but then also you get to a point where like now you're greedy and also it's also you're not doing what's in the best interest of anyone right now. So that's an interesting one. Same with tenure. Like I get why it exists, but also like I don't get to just have a job just to have a job. So especially if I'm not particularly good at that job.
Yeah, right. It seems a little bit misaligned.
Yeah.
and suboptimal if I'm interested in really streamlining my organization and innovating and doing good work. Um, you know, there's always going to be 20% of the people who are the highest performers in any organization, and 80% and 20% who just human beings. 20% of us are going to be the top performers. There's going to be 20% of the population who are going to struggle for a million different reasons, and then there's 60% in the middle. And from an organizational standpoint, the opportunity is to help those 60% really self-actualize and become as strong contributors as they're interested in becoming, and have the best lives as they can. And companies are a delivery mechanism for that here for the most part.
Yeah, it's a good delivery mechanism. I like that. So you've pretty much worked from home for probably a really long time. Do you ever feel like isolated? But you're always out and doing stuff, so like it's probably a different thing for you. Yeah.
It
Okay.
is. Yeah, I'm not just at home. Never. I don't like to work at home.
Oh yeah, you
Really.
do. I remember that. Yeah,
I
like
love
to be out and about.
I love being out and about. So I always put on headphones and just have like ambient noise. I was gonna say white noise, Centauri, but I didn't want to be perceived as racist. I always have black noise going on in my headphones.
That's so good. What are your as someone who's been a manager and you've managed teams and done a lot of things in your career, what are your thoughts are just top level on or top line on the hybrid return to office?
Yeah, my experience has always been in hiring salespeople, and so
Mm,
hiring, managing salespeople. So, um, but I it was before Zoom. So my sales management career was 6 years, and it ended before we did virtual calls. So I don't know how that would have gone. Um, but certainly, I think at this point, should I ever have a large organization that I'm running, I would want everybody to come in at least once a month. I'm not a fan
mm.
of meetings. Um, so I don't know that I would mandate that people come to a physical location, but it just kind of depends. So,
Depends on that. Yeah,
I'm never going to hire 1,000 people. So, knock on wood, I can't imagine. So when I do hire people, I work really, really hard on the front end to make sure that I'm selecting somebody that's going to perform the function that I expect, and they're going to be happy and get the experience that they want also. So I think it's all about selection. I think it's all about doing your best to figure out expectations up front. And it's not perfect because people can say what they want to get a job,
get
and
a
people
job. Yeah.
change.
Yep.
People have kids or whatever, or we get life changes and we forget to tell one another. So just expecting and encouraging as much transparency and openness as possible. From my experience, when you tell somebody, hey, I would like this, or I'd like a change here or there, that's way better than having a quiet quit or quiet fire somebody.
Yep. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, that's good.
So unlimited PTO, same kind of thing. I just read about that. Um, it's kind of a ruse. People were bitching about it on bitching about Microsoft's unlimited PTO policy, and what happens is that you end up not actually.
You never
Uh,
take any PTO.
and yeah, and so if you don't, you would be compensated for that, right? Because most people have X number of days off every year, and there's value in that. So if you don't take it, then you get paid out on it. So who knows?
Yeah. The unlimited PTO. Yeah, I've been at companies where it's there, but it's like, okay, like no one ever took it. Or yeah, to your point, like I'm now not entitled to that if I ever leave because you usually get paid out by PTO. So it's like, oh, that was nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing to show for it.
Yeah. I think that's again, it's really a selection thing on kind of the front end. So, all right. So there it is. Stop bitching about it. Do something about it. I don't know if that's appropriate at all, but
I don't know for this topic. I
no,
don't think
probably
that's
not.
good.
What else could don't talk about it, be about it? Is that how it goes? Nobody cares, work harder. Is that how it goes?
Find a company that is aligned to what you feel you need to fulfill yourself personally and professionally.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that anymore. You know, I think that if we're in a job that we hate, then it's not going to be a good experience for anybody. So
That's very true.
da 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 da. What's in store for the weekend, Sentari? You got some board meetings,
Actually
some
not
some
that.
retreats.
Wait, maybe. No. We have our all team, we're getting all of our company together next week. And so spending some time just putting together that deck and some facilitation points. So doing a little work, probably going to go see a couple of movies. And I think that's it. What's in store for the Crompackers?
Awesome. We're going to Arizona. So if this is the last time we talk, it's because a bear ate me.
Is that where you like drive through it?
Yeah. Here
Uh,
comes the joke.
White people?
That's it.
Because I was thinking for sure. Well, be safe.
I'll keep my eyes out for any non-white folks at Arizona.
Yeah, you tell me how many of those there are.
Amazing.
Oh, it's so
Yep, we're,
good.
we're going to Arizona. So either I'm going to come back with a bearskin rug, or I'll been eaten by a bear, or hopefully we'll just have a great time, and my kids will love it. Why don't we just plan on that?
I think we'll just plan on your kids having a great time. That does sound really cool. Take a bunch of pictures.
Excellent. All right, sir. Well, thanks as always for listening. Do like, share, comment, all the things. And as always, keep questioning because the struggle is real.